Skoda's new Fabia is here in Australia and it's a lot more expensive than before. There's no surprises there, especially if you already caught Tom's walk around of this car in the studio before. But after driving it, I'm here to tell you that that upcharge is kind of worth it. Now, of course, it's all going to be down to personal taste, but for my money, I reckon this Fabia is better than the Volkswagen Golf 110 TSI R-Line, which itself is more expensive and really has a very similar flavour to it. So that's what we're going to be talking about mostly in today's video, as well as checking out the interior, how practical this Fabia is, spoiler alert, it's very practical, and then taking it out for a spin on some fantastic roads out here in the Blue Mountains. Of course, I'd love to hear your opinion on the new Fabia Monte Carlo. Is it too expensive for you at $37,990 drive away? Let me know down below, and let's get into it. Now, I know some of you are going to be having a fair bit of price shock, but the new Fabia does a great job of justifying it already rolling out of the showroom floor, because the new look of this 4th generation Fabia is really fantastic. It kind of looks like the concept car for the 2nd generation Fabia. It's tidy, it's neat, and in Monte Carlo, guys, I happen to think it looks really great, especially in this velvet red colorway, which does add an extra $600 to the price. You've got that black front grille, these really sharp looking 18-inch alloy wheels, shot in quality Continental Sport Contact 5 tyres. You got your Monte Carlo badging, a black pack with a contrast roof that you'd have to pay extra for on something like a Hyundai i20N, which itself has gone up in price recently. And we come around the back and you see this real quality side strake here, very reminiscent of the Audi A1. Now, I know everyone at Skoda is going to hate me for saying that, but you can't deny it does look rather like that. And it all adds up to a very sharp looking little light car. The Skoda brand DNA continues back here with very familiar spaced out lettering. Being a Monte Carlo edition, it gets a black pack, which applies to all the badges as well. And the new Fabia has these really gorgeous LED taillights. They're not sequential indicators, but they still look really sharp out on the road. And I think at the back, there's a real vibe of miniature Octavia back here. And I think this little car would look fantastic next to an Octavia RS wagon in your garage. Let's pop the boot, which is manually operated, but being a light car, that's no big deal at all because it's really easy to reach up there and get to the nice little rubberized handle here. Opening the boot, we also find heaps of space. This thing has a seriously capacious boot. 380 litres is almost unheard of in this traditional class. It really punches up to the size above. It's bigger than a Mazda 3, a Toyota Corolla, and it's almost as big as a Volkswagen Golf. Of course, you also get Skoda's usual suite of practicalities back here, which continue going away to justify that $37,990 drive away price. I mean, look at all these nets and practical touches, little soft bag holders there for holding bicycle helmets or something like that. You've also got a rubberized boot floor that's reversible so you can protect the carpet. And under that boot floor, you even have a spare wheel. It's not quite full size, being 185mm wide and a 50 section 15, but it is bigger than a space saver spare tire and should give you plenty of peace of mind out here on country roads like the one we're standing on. The new Fabia's interior is leaps and bounds ahead of the car it replaces. That old PQ platform car's technology package just really can't live up to the new eye-grabbing stuff in here. But it's not only the technology package, it's also the amount of style, the design, and the materials and the build quality in here that really makes it feel like this car is a size class above traditional light cars. Yes, Mazda's Mazda 2 went for a premium push in its latest update, but there's something about a Skoda interior that is just simple. It works, it's well finished, and it does a really great job of everything it needs to do. Let's start with the technology package. In here in the center, we've got a really crisp and responsive 9.2-inch touchscreen that has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's also got inbuilt navigation, DAB radio, and all the usual stuff you expect. It's not quite as big as the largest in the light car class, being the Hyundai i20N's 10.25-inch screen, but it's really quite up there in terms of size, and you've also got helpful shortcut buttons still on the side of it, which is a lovely touch. You also have simple to interact with climate control settings down here with all physical dials and buttons, and an extra menu in the touchscreen infotainment system where you can customize it to your liking. In front of me, I've got a 10.25-inch digital driver's display, a far cry from the analog dials that were in the previous Fabia. Now, that may not be to everyone's taste, but I think we know that Skoda and the Volkswagen Group in general does a fantastic digital driver's display with the ability to show a full-sized map, and that is just so great to have. The design in here as well is really eye-catching. It's sporty, and yes, this Monte Carlo has a couple of touches that separate it. This red bar across the dashboard here looks really sharp and crisp, And I really love the extra Fabia insignias here on the dashboard, right in the instrument binnacle. I think that really adds a touch of class and a touch of difference to the Fabia that makes it not feel at all like a reskinned Polo. Of course, we've got some of the classic Skoda Simply Clever features in here too, including bins in the door pockets, umbrellas in the door, and there will shortly be the inclusion of a cup holder here in the center console, apparently due to shipping or supply issues. They didn't come in the first batch of cars, but if you've ordered one, you'll get one free of charge from your Skoda dealer as soon as they're available. You also get wireless charging here ahead of the gear shifter, and although the ergonomics on the whole are really good and you've got lots of shortcut buttons on the steering wheel to do pretty much everything you need, one of the ergonomic misses in this car is the placement of the drive mode selector for right-hand drive markets especially. When you've got this physical shifter in drive, it's actually quite difficult to see where the drive mode button is and where the auto start stop is. Yes, it's a nitpick, but with two free buttons over here, I really reckon Skoda could have gone to the effort of swapping those onto this side. Still, not the end of the world. The other slight miss in this car, being a sporty variant, is the lack of paddle shifters behind the steering wheel, which means you have to take control of it down here using the physical gear stick. But again, not really the end of the world because this is not a hot hatch, it is just a slightly warmed over light hatch. Finally, we come to the seats, which are actually very hot hatch. They're really sexy bucket seats with this nice thermoflux fabric that stays cool in the hot sun. No, you can't get leather, but honestly, that's not a big deal. They have plenty of manual adjustment and a good amount of lumbar support as standard, though there isn't adjustable lumbar. They also have 3-stage heating, and they're set really nice and low in this car, which allows you to adopt a sporty position without sacrificing what is a fantastic amount of visibility out of this little car. At the top, I said that this Fabia Monte Carlo is comparable to a Golf R-Line. Now, as we get into the back seat here, you can probably already see that's not strictly true for this part here. The boot space certainly is, but the rear quarters are pretty tight given this car's pretty compact dimensions. But it's actually still quite usable for me as a 6'2" adult. If you want to put 5 people, it's going to be difficult, but for me, I have a decent amount of headroom. Yes, my legs are touching the bucket seat in front of me, but I do have a little bit of toe room spare as well. So if you're a bit shorter, you probably won't have too much trouble fitting back here. But you won't really want to put someone in the middle seat because there is a little removable cup holder insert here that's actually a very clever design. You've got a rubberized cup holder. You've even got niceties like a pair of USB-C charging ports and a pair of air vents back here so you don't get hot and sweaty on a day that we're used to in Australia. So there is actually a lot of thought that has been put into the back seat of this car, and the fact of the matter is that if you're all a little bit shorter than me, then you probably won't have too much trouble back here. Even the bench is really comfortable. It's still got this nice thermoflux fabric back here, and the headrests are supportive and comfortable. Yes, it's got scratchy door materials, but for putting 2 people back here in a pinch, or even fairly regularly if you're a bit shorter than me, then the Fabia is still a fantastic choice. One of the crucial advantages of the new Fabia Monte Carlo over something like a Volkswagen Golf fitted with its 110 TSI engine is that this car gets the more modern Evo engine. That means really low fuel consumption. The ADR claim is 4.9 litres per 100 kilometres, matching Audi's A3 fitted with the same engine. In real-world testing, we've seen 8 litres per 100 Ks driving on twisty mountain roads out here in the Blue Mountains, but I'll update above me with what we got on the run back to Sydney, because I'm thinking that downhill run is going to get a really low figure from this Monte Carlo, which is something to get a little bit excited about. As for servicing, Skoda will sell you a really great value 7-year service package that will only cost $2,100 for this Fabia behind me. Now that's pretty decent value, especially when you consider the fact that that pack extends Skoda's warranty for another 2 years on top of the usual 5-year unlimited kilometre guarantee. That offer stands until the end of the year, the 31st of December, so if you get one before then, that offer will cover you. As for insurance, over the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $731 to comprehensively insure their new Skoda Fabia. Your premium may vary based on things that insurers take into account, such as where you live, your driving history, and whether or not you garage the car. The little Fabia Monte Carlo is an interesting light car because it sits in a funny place in the market. It's not a true hot hatch, a rival for the Ford Fiesta ST, the Polo GTI, or a Hyundai i20N, but it is warmed through. It definitely steps up above those cooking variants of light cars like a regular Polo and something like a Mazda 2 and a Toyota Yaris. A lot of that's down to the engine under the bonnet, which is a fairly recent development from Volkswagen, sort of fairly recent for Australia at least, the TSI Evo engine. So it's a 1.5 litre engine still badged the 110 TSI, the same as the old 1.4, and it makes the exact same outputs at 110 kilowatts of power and 250 newton meters of torque. But this engine is really refined. Now you can really feel the difference when you go back to back. This launch that we're on at the moment included the Skoda Karoq 110 TSI style that's fitted with the previous generation 1.4 litre TSI engine. And actually the Fabia is funny because it is a more refined engine. You hear less of what the engine's doing, and yeah, it just feels a little bit classier, a little bit sleeker. And it's interesting that it is fitted to the lighter car, one of the traditionally more affordable Skodas, but of course now it's quite a lot more expensive. Now, I think it's a little bit of a shame that Skoda's not going to give us another VRS version of the Fabia, because I think with that 2-litre turbo, the same one that you'd find in a Polo GTI, Skoda's take on that car would be really interesting. I think it'd be a lot of fun, really great little package, but I guess we can only bemoan that because Skoda Europe has already said that there's no chance of that, and that's really coming down to emissions regulations. Maybe we'll see something electric in the future, small electric hot hatch, but we'll have to wait and see. For now, it's this car to start with in Australia. Now, speaking to the executives at Skoda, they did mention that it was potential that in about 12 months, once supply of this Monte Carlo grade is exhausted, they may look at introducing another grade below, fitted with that 1-litre turbo petrol 3-cylinder found in cooking Polos, but we'll have to see. Because this Monte Carlo feels like a really sweet package that bridges the gap between a regular hatch and a hot hatch very nicely indeed. The suspension is a little bit firm, no adaptives or anything like that, but you can feel it's got a nice tight body control, and that translates to a car that is fun through a tight twisting section of corners. But the size of this car actually feels very confident out on the open road as well. It's not like a Mazda 2 that feels a little bit undergunned on the roads out here west of Sydney over the Blue Mountains and over the Great Dividing Range. The Mazda 2 feels a little bit light and flighty, where this Monte Carlo Skoda Fabia just feels really planted, secure, and has all of the hallmarks of the Skoda handling dynamics that we've come to expect. It has that slightly loose-limbed feeling that is really pleasant. It feels like it's breathing with the road at all times and absorbing bumps. It can be a little bit firm. It does have 215/40 Series 18 tyres, and they are a Continental Sport contact tyre, so they are a little bit sportier than what you'd normally find on a cooking hatch of this grade, but it really just suits this car. It could do with a little bit more engine noise as well, just personally speaking, but that's coming from a hot hatch lover, someone who loves hot hatches. You do also have a couple of different drive modes. As I mentioned, it's actually a little bit difficult to find here. Sport amps things up a little bit. It adds a little bit of sharpness to the steering of this car and adds a little bit of steering weight. But I will say the steering rack in this car is really nice. I do very much enjoy Volkswagen Group and Skoda's sportier steering racks. It's quick, it's precise, and there's not much feel, but there's plenty of precision, so you can actually place this car with real conviction on a good twisting country road. Now, let's talk a little bit about suspension as well, because I know I keep coming back to the Volkswagen Golf, and the fact of the matter is that this car doesn't feel quite as grown up as a Golf out on the road, and a lot of that comes down to the MQB A0 platform under this vehicle, which is designed for slightly smaller cars like light cars, rather than the MQB Evo platform that underpins the Mark 8 Golf. Now, the Mark 8 Golf in Australia is fitted with independent rear suspension as well, and that just gives a little bit of extra dexterity to the rear end, a little bit more confidence-inspiring nature to the Golf over this Monte Carlo Fabia. But honestly, a torsion beam isn't bad, and when you're only dealing with a car that weighs 1,265 kilos, as this little Fabia does, it doesn't have that many restrictions as it does when it's dealing with a heavier car like an SUV. It really shines through in something like a Karoq style, where you can hear that torsion beam kind of resonance making it into the cabin, but here it's not so bad. You do feel it a little bit, but ultimately this car is a really accomplished little car, and nothing else in its light car genre actually offers multi-link rear end suspension in Australia right now. They're all torsion beam cars. Even the Hyundai i20N, even the Volkswagen Polo GTI, they're all nice simple torsion beams that work just fine. Now, that brings me on to refinement, which I think the Fabia has really come a long way. Just like the interior, the new car is a lot quieter than it replaces, and it doesn't feel like it gets tossed around on the freeway. The old car kind of did with its low-powered engine, but this thing is really nice and tracks really straight and true. You've also got a bunch more driving aids here. It's not the most up-to-date system of driving aids, which at sort of $37,990 drive away. Maybe I wish we did have a more advanced highway cruise assist, like a highway travel assist with lane centering, but you do have a pretty decent adaptive cruise control system, lane keep assist. You also have front and rear parking sensors fitted as standard, a reversing camera, and this car is equipped with blind spot monitoring, which Skoda calls side assist, and that's also bundled with rear cross traffic alert that brings reverse maneuver braking. So under 8 k's an hour, it will apply the brakes if it detects an obstacle behind you. And that just means that this Fabia is an awful lot safer than the car it replaces. The crash structure as well should be better at protecting occupants in the unlikely and very sad event of an incident. And that's been backed up by Euro NCAP, which has given this car a 5-star safety rating. Not the same story yet for ANCAP, but it is likely, giving Euro NCAP's 5-star score, that the Australian or the Australasian crash testing body ANCAP will also award the Fabia 5 stars. So, after all that, do I recommend the Fabia? Do I reckon it's a good option in this market segment, even at that price? Well, when it comes to driving, I honestly have to say yes. It feels a lot more grown up than the size of this car suggests, and it does strike a really interesting niche balance between what you would call a traditional light hatch, a grocery getter grandma car, and a hot hatch, one that's sportier, spicier, and a little bit more interesting. It strikes that balance very well, in my opinion, and although it's not going to be for everyone, and I would absolutely probably never take this car to a racetrack unless I got an ABT tuning kit fitted to it, I do see the appeal, and yeah, the Fabia Monte Carlo edition is certainly an interesting new competitor in the market segment. And it's funny, sitting in the Fabia, examining it, really taking in what's what about this little light car, kind of makes you think, do I actually really, honestly, if I'm being honest with myself, need anything faster, bigger, more comfortable, or more sophisticated than what this Fabia offers? And the more I drive this thing, the more that answer slides towards, no, this is a car that can do it all. And that is something that should be applauded. The Fabia Monte Carlo is undeniably expensive for the class that it sits in. You can get cars that are full-fledged hot hatches like the Hyundai i20N, Fiesta ST, and the Volkswagen Polo GTI for not a whole lot more money than this Fabia. But this car offers something different. It's frugal, but it's sporty enough to enjoy on a twisty back road. It doesn't reach the dynamic heights of those hot hatches I mentioned before, but it is a real step up from something like a Volkswagen Polo, and certainly a step up from the naturally aspirated Mazda 2 and Toyota Yaris. And for that reason, I think it strikes a really interesting balance. It's quite a niche that's not going to be for everyone, but with Skoda only bringing in 600 units of this Monte Carlo edition over the next 12 months, it's not supposed to be for everyone. It's supposed to be for people who really enjoy the Skoda brand and want a small, sporty car that fits into their lifestyle really well, and I think this car happens to do that just fantastically. Of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below, what you think of the pricing, what you think of the driving experience of a new Fabia if you've had time in one, and while you're there leaving your opinion, why not hit subscribe to Chasing Cars if you haven't done so already, and as always, thank you very much for watching.